Thanks for joining us this week on the show. I am thrilled to be joining you early in 2025 with a fresh year, fresh starts, and invitation to make a fresh look around your home by tackling any clutter, any chaos that might be building up. You'll find reasons why, some insights, some inspiration, some tips inside this episode as we are clearing the clutter and welcoming a prosperous, a happy, and a healthy 2025. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
It's time to flip the script on stress and learn how to thrive today and throughout your days. Join me for inspiration and interviews with folks who are shining their light in the world in the areas of positive mindset, health, and well-being. I'm your host, Susie Vine. Let's get happified.
Welcome back. I am thrilled to have you back with me this week for a conversation that perhaps you feel is timely as we turn the page and step into 2025. And I think is always something to keep in mind. So whenever you are coming across this podcast episode, today we are digging into the topic of clutter and clearing clutter, making space for new, beautiful things to come into your life by releasing that which no longer serves you. And stick around until the end. I'll let you know about a special event that is coming up if you're catching this episode shortly after it is being released early in 2025. So you're not going to want to miss the opportunity that I'll be sharing with you later on today. So, how does stress and feeling happier and brighter as best you can in the areas of your life relate to clutter? Maybe this is a simple correlation that you can easily see. Maybe these aren't really very close on that spectrum of awareness yet, but stick with me. I think you're going to discover how recognizing areas in which we are carrying clutter and finding that capacity, that willpower to release clutter and those things that don't serve us anymore can help to lower your overall stress load. I think there's a lot of insights that you can find in this space. And I was helping people to downsize and declutter long before I turned my attention specifically to the focus of helping people resolve stress and feel more empowered in their relationship with stress, whether it is coming in on those emotional, physical, or environmental aspects that we explore here in 3X Less Stress. So I see a lot of connection here, and I hope that I'll give you some light bulb moments as we continue on in today's conversation. So I'm so glad you're with me. And I hope that you will share your insights, your takeaways, if you're able to leave a comment on this episode, whether you're listening on Spotify, catching the video on YouTube, or finding it on happifiedlife.com. You're welcome to leave a comment on this particular episode and share your takeaways. I'd love to hear what stands out for you and what inspiration you take from this show. So, as we are still early in stepping into 2025, it still feels like a beautiful time for a fresh start. Maybe you finished your planning before you turn the calendar page. I know that for myself, I'm still envisioning what the year ahead has in store. And part of what helps me be very successful in that realm is really clearing the decks, clearing out what has come up and what I have worked through and moved past in 2024 and what I want to have with me in this ride as I move forward into the coming year. I like to have a clear landscape. I like to clear as much out of the way as I can, whether that is on my desk, looking around and seeing some piles and stacks that want my attention. So let me also be very clear and honest with you, and that this is an ongoing process. And I hope it becomes one for you too. Whether it is monthly or quarterly, it's nice to have points throughout the year when you check in, when you get a fresh look at the way you're moving through your day, your life, and at how your environment is supporting you. Are you starting to collect some clutter around the edges? Or perhaps, is there a room, the garage, an extra bedroom, maybe a basement if you have one, where you tend to close the door and hope no one notices how much there is waiting for your attention. So, whether you're catching this episode early in the new year or just is coming up for you at a time at which you feel ready to tackle the clutter that is gathering in your life, I hope you'll take this inspiration with you. One of the things that a friend of mine over the years, Mel Mason, who has also been a guest on the podcast, and I will share her link in the show notes. You hear many people say it in the self-development space, and it's something that she refers to often in her work, specifically helping people to conquer clutter in their lives. As it is within, so it is without. What we see in our external world is a reflection of our inner state of peace or turmoil, emotional chaos, or feeling calm and centered. It's a really interesting relationship. And so a lot of times people may discover, you might have experienced, if you go through a wonderful course or a program, you've had some good learning, some powerful insights, you're feeling more clear and confident as you're moving forward, you might naturally have been inspired to clear out the closet, to take some bags to the thrift store or resale to lighten your load. Or if you set a date on the calendar to tackle that closet, to clear out some of the areas that have been waiting for your attention, you might have felt more emotionally or psychologically peaceful and spacious. Because as you look around your living space, there's less there to cause friction, to cause some of that dissonance that clutter can invoke in our mental landscape. So I invite you to look for correlations there. As we talk today, we're going to be talking about different impacts that clutter has in your life, not only emotional, also psychological, but very much financial as well as environmental impacts. So I'll also refer back to something that I used to share often when I was in the space of helping people declutter and downsize. This is in the work that I did with senior clients in their 80s and 90s. They were typically moving from their family home into their next stage, retirement living, a retirement community, senior apartments. It typically entailed downsizing from a large home they might have raised their family in to a much smaller space. And this is after a whole life spent creating memories, acquiring souvenirs and mementos. And how do you tackle that monumental project at a time at which in your life you're also facing significant change? I can tell you the ones who were the most successful at it were the ones who were looking at this change as an opportunity, as a new chapter, as an invitation to new experiences in their lives. And those who are willing to look at everything that it serves them to take with them into that new life, and not those who were counting everything they had to give up, everything they had to get rid of in order to make it into that next chapter. As with all things, and as I often say on the show, you'll hear myself and many of my guests talk about it, perspective is so powerful. So I invite you to look for ways to hold a positive perspective as we talk about the topic of clutter today. Take some notes. As I said, share your ahas or insights, because this is something that as it comes up and you find that opportunity for insights, you might feel more welcoming to them. In the future, as you're looking back, you might not be in that same mental space. So I encourage you to seize these little nuggets that come up through our conversation and hold on to those as motivation in the future. So as I was saying, when I was sharing talks and I was talking with more clients about decluttering and downsizing, the marvelous woman I used to work with who founded Senior Move Masters here in the San Diego area, Linda, would often incur the Pareto principle, which, if you're unfamiliar, is the 80-20 rule. And in many cases, you will hear people say there's an 80-20 distribution. 20% of the people hold 80% of the wealth, right? 20% of your clients bring in 80% of your income. Well, you can turn that to apply to the things in your life as Linda enlightened me. And you can say, 80% of what you use is comprised of 20% of what you own. And think about that for a second. Would you say that in your life, unless you have already embraced a minimalist lifestyle, if you have been finding joy and decluttering for a while, you might also kind of feel that strikes a chord when you hear that 80% of what you own goes unused, because 20% of what you own makes up 80% of what you use in your regular life. And then, as we'll explore further as we continue the conversation, what resources is it taking from you to tend to the 80% that you own that is not in use, that is not serving you? So keep that 80-20 rule in your mind also as we continue. So taking a look, as I said, at the emotional as well as financial and then psychological and stress aspects of clutter. First, we're going to take a look at the emotional aspect, because this is why people tend to put it off, tend to feel so exhausted by the idea of tackling clutter, or simply perpetually put off this project because emotionally it is draining. If it was a project that had no emotional pull to it, you would be able to open a drawer of files and quickly sort through and say, these papers I don't need. This project has expired. I don't need this in my life. And you can shred or you can toss these papers, right? You do want to be careful with what you're disposing of and make sure you find the best direction for it. Some papers need to be shredded. Some that don't have your personal information, it's not as important. Some things can be useful to some groups. In that case, you want to find the best receiver for it as quickly as possible and not let those things sit around and let that be one more thing on your to-do list. I know somebody wants my design books from my college degree 20 years ago. Let me get around to looking for who that is, right? We're looking to clear the obstacles out of the way because the emotional connection to the things in our lives is strong enough without other excuses for delays. So, what is it that we have? What is this emotional attachment that we connect with items? Sometimes they are good reminders. We got something from a loved one. We picked up this souvenir on a trip that we had with a loved one, or we just had an amazing time. It's a special place, and this souvenir evokes beautiful memories. Sometimes these souvenirs are attached to accomplishments. Anybody else save their tassel from their graduation cap, be it high school or college, for years after the fact until they finally gave themselves permission to discard it? You're not going to use it again, right? But these little tokens can somehow take on great importance. Sometimes that importance is not a happy memory. Sometimes that importance that we attach to things is for what you might say is a bad reason. It's not a memory that fills you with joy or pride, but something that might remind you of a lesson that you were supposed to learn. Maybe you saved a glass or a program from an event where it didn't go well, where you didn't receive the award, where someone else did. You might have felt slighted. What are some other situations in which you might save a memento or a souvenir to remind you of less positive times? People that you might have lost, obligations that you were not able to fulfill. Sometimes we hold on to things to teach us a lesson. And I would love to give you permission today to let those go. You learned the lesson that you were supposed to learn. You took away the moral, the learning that you were supposed to carry forward. You don't need physical items to embody that for you. So I would love to give you permission to release those, to let them go and move forward freely. We can also explore how, when some of these good memories are tied up in physical items, we can look at ways to release the physical aspect of it. And maybe that good memory that you love a reminder for, maybe a whole album of pictures that sits on your shelf, can be scanned and digitized so it can be on your computer. It can be a slideshow, perhaps a screensaver on your computer, or something that you can easily call up and watch on a screen as opposed to in a photo album that collects dust or worse over time. I have had to finally purge myself of most of my physical photo albums just because I've lived in so many different areas, so many different climates. They've been exposed to moisture, and they just weren't really healthy to have in my home anymore. And I can tell you, after my parents' 50th anniversary party that we celebrated last month, I spent hours scanning photos, but the ability to look through those images with them, to have color corrected and tweaked photos during the evenings, I fitted in around the edges of my free time. It was time well spent. And now these digitized photos can be enjoyed by myself, my parents, my brother, and we are all free of the boxes of assorted photos in different sizes that were hard to organize that now we can easily see online. So consider how, if this is a very special memory, if this is a very special memento that you have trouble parting with, how you might be able to make that a virtual reminder, perhaps by scanning photos, perhaps audio recordings, perhaps making a kind of a virtual memory board, scrapbook, where you don't need to have the physical item with you, but you can carry those emotional memories. I remember when I was helping one of my clients with downsizing, and we got to her laundry room and opened the cabinets, and she must have had over 3 dozen different flower vases. And she shared that she had kept all of these vases because they all came to her holding floral arrangements, whether for Mother's Day, for her birthday, for Christmas. Family, children, even grandchildren who were not able to be with her physically would send her flowers, and she kept all of these vases. And while I appreciate her thoroughness and she had the cabinets in which to store them when it was time to move, she still struggled with that emotional connection, even though they looked nothing like the flower in the arrangement that she originally received, even though they didn't have names as to who had sent what. And I had to remind her that her family wouldn't want her to be beholden to these vases that no longer hold flowers. She gets a new vase every time they send her flowers. But also, and think about this for yourself, these holidays come up with regularity. Birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Grandparents' Day, Siblings' Day, all of these reasons why we feel obliged to send gifts. And you might be one of the rare exceptions that remembers every gift you have gotten in order to give to someone, right? Every single gift is filed in your library. Kudos to you if that is true. But I shared with her, and I invited her to think about this for herself. It's very likely that someone does not remember everything they gave you for every Father's Day or Mother's Day or Valentine's Day. It was a time, it was a season to find a gift, to demonstrate affection, and you received the gift, and the affection was received with that. And just because you got a gift from someone does not mean you are slighting them or making less of their intention by letting that gift go. Whether it's because it's old and doesn't hold up anymore, whether it's because it is not something that suits you, whether it is because it is something that you no longer use and it is sitting on a shelf or in a box, you have permission to not keep anything that no longer serves you. And it is no slight on the giver. And it means no less in your gratitude for receiving this loving gift. Next, we're going to take a look at the financial cost of the things we keep. So easily off the top of your head, it makes some sense, right? Especially if 80% of what we use is comprised of 20% of what we own. That means 80% of what we own is not in use. It might be shoved into closets, on shelves, in boxes. It might be in a storage unit. Talk about a great industry to invest in. It really demonstrates how much we Americans, at least, hold on to stuff. We're so pressed for time that we'd rather move boxes offsite into a storage unit and then never make the time to go through them and keep paying month after month after month on this storage. So, beyond the cost of storage fees, how many times have you looked and looked for an item that you knew you had but couldn't find it and had to replace it? Maybe you couldn't find it because you have too many other things also in the mix. And I have heard of people say their concern, if I have this now and I might need it in a couple of years, I hate to let it go. And I invite you to ask yourself, how long has it been since you've used this? What is the likelihood that I'm going to need it? And do I know someone that I could borrow one from? Right? So consider that on the off chance of maybe you move back into a bigger home and then you have room for this extra lamp that isn't currently in use. Maybe you'll have better room in your closet and then you can use this storage item again. But at the moment, it is shoved away in an attic or a basement or a storage unit. Think about the likelihood of using these things and think about how much it could serve someone else if you were to donate it and to let it go. So, other hidden costs that you might not recognize with having too much stuff. We tend to lose productivity and creativity when we are trying to navigate through clutter and chaos. And this can add up at home and at work. It also could be costing you a whole room in your home. Often, if we are able to close the door on it, we don't recognize that we're missing out on having a guest room or a studio, a workspace, so that you can have an office in an office, not in your bedroom or on the dining room table. Think about how you can better optimize your home space if you have less clutter. Think about resale income from selling those items or even multiples of items that you store and might use someday. You could also find a little bit of income by selling those. And often feeling beholden to your home or your stuff could be limiting you even from opportunities to travel, to take interesting job opportunities away from home, to feel like you could easily move into a different situation without feeling like it's going to take weeks or even months to go through the items that you have at your home and pack, right? So living lightly is something that appeals to some people. You might not feel like someone who needs that capacity to live lightly, to be flexible and nimble. However, you never know what life could serve up to you. And I do love the visual, the analogy of having your hands open. And when you're holding on to things, when you have your fists clenched, you don't have any hands open to receive. So when you find the capacity to release the things that you have been holding on to so tightly, you might just be amazed to discover what the universe has in store that it is ready to share with you now that you have the capacity to receive. So let's take a little bit of a look at the psychological aspects of clutter. Certainly, the things in our life can be a source of stress. And sometimes the stress in our life changes our relationship with our stuff. Sometimes when people struggle with anxiety or depression, they can start to postpone managing their things, the stuff of life. The bills start to pile up, the mail goes unopened. Cleaning might not happen for a prolonged period of time, maybe because you have to move some things to dust a shelf. That dust just gets thicker, which starts to compromise your air quality. There's a very circular sort of relationship in terms of the stress we feel, how we navigate in our space, and the way that our space then starts to cause us stress, physically as well as emotionally. I've also seen people become more socially isolated because they're ashamed of the way their home space looks. This can be a sign of hoarding, cluttering taken to the next level, which is a point at which certainly psychological help is essential in moving forward in the best possible way. Trying to clear someone else's clutter If you have someone in your family who you would classify as a hoarder, recognize that this isn't something you can do for someone else. They have to be a part of the process because often, it is within, so it is without. There's something going on psychologically or emotionally that is part of holding on to that clutter. And you really need to be sensitive and call in qualified reinforcements when it comes to helping people let go of their stuff. One of the things that I learned that I was surprised to discover in training that I received for working with hoarders and hoarding clients is that often people with hoarding tendencies or habits come from very highly educated and very cerebral backgrounds. They might have a master's or PhD, they might be teachers, even doctors, lawyers, writers, people with very mental and advanced occupations. However, they are also often triggered by a serious emotional incident. Something has happened where they might feel out of control, where they might feel devastated, lost, left behind, isolated. And so, as a way of manifesting control, sometimes people who started out with some clutter tip those scales into hoarding patterns because it is a way of manifesting control. They can make the choice not to choose what to do with their mail. They can make the choice not to throw away any newspapers. They can make the choice to hold on to every plastic bag, but not in an organized or a beneficial fashion, right? And so understanding that hoarding is not a simple pattern and that it can have deep roots in emotional beginnings, it can have a very interwoven history, and it's going to take a lot of support to untangle that, to help someone move through that. If you are someone who recognizes that that might even apply to you, um, please do be kind with yourself, call in the reinforcements, and list help, not only from family and friends to support you and cheer you on, but also professionals who have experience in working with hoarders, because it takes commitment and it takes planning and strategy to unwind, to move forward from that pattern. So, just a little bit of insight there, a bit of context, right? Sometimes people can glibly say, I'm a hoarder, but what they really mean is they're frustrated with the amount of stuff that is around them in their home. Certainly, parents who have children have another level of stuff around them in their home. And as children grow and age out of certain things, they don't need this, but their younger sibling might. And so there's a bit of a holding pattern. Recognizing that there are stages and phases in life where we have surpluses of stuff, and looking for those opportunities where we can release what doesn't serve us and find peace with what is in our environment to clear some of the clutter and to lighten our load mentally as well as physically in our home. If you haven't yet had the experience of feeling pride in clearing a cluttered space, whether that is going through your closet and pulling out those hangers of clothes you're not using and filling a couple of bags for donation, whether that is going through kitchen cabinets and pulling out the things, the mismatched lids for storage containers and pots that don't have lids or vice versa, culling down to one set. There are so many ways in which you can start to make progress and enjoy in very short order that really rewarding, satisfying feeling of accomplishment of clearing out some of the excess. Sometimes all it takes to get started is one junk drawer. And sometimes the best way to stay on target with your task is to take small installments. Only do one drawer at a time so that you don't get burned out, you don't get overloaded, you don't get discouraged and put off coming back to it. We're going to talk a little bit more about those strategies in just a few minutes. But I invite you to hold that space for what you could receive as a benefit from decluttering. So think about, as you perhaps go through a bookshelf or a cabinet and clear out old notebooks, old binders, books that you're not using anymore, things from old classes you thought you would come back to, but you haven't in a long time. Think about that space, that clarity. Sometimes it's nice to get a review to see what you have studied, what you have completed, what is still on your to-do list. You don't need to save a whole book as a reminder. You can put on your task list, review this course, right? Often we have online resources available now, so we don't need to keep the book, the notebook, the binders, the things that all went along with it. Certainly more so when I was in school than even following generations. So think about that possibility, the improved focus, the improved productivity when you get all of these mental reminders as you might have kept them, these books sitting on shelves, and cull it down to a very select list. How inspiring that is to not feel overwhelmed when you look at that list, when you have a free day and you think, I'd like to review a course. Here's a nice, tidy list, not an overwhelming shelf full of books, folders, and note pages sticking out. It sounds like I know exactly what I'm talking about, doesn't it? It's because it's true. I chip away at this through an ongoing process. I focus on different areas in my life, whether it's my clothing closets, whether sometimes it's cabinets and shelves. Different seasons inspire different focus, and I invite you to start where it serves you. One of the other benefits that I do enjoy after every clearing session is being able then to see so much more easily and clearly the things that matter the most to me. The less that I have on surfaces, the more present I can be to what is there. It just makes sense, right? When there's so much to take in, we start to look past it and we don't see everything anymore. We can become blind to it. And so as we revisit the things that we have, as we choose what we want to keep in our space, then those things are more precious to us, more visible to us, and we can release the excess that also can be filling our mind with mental clutter as well. So I'd love to take a little bit further look now at how stress can lead us to holding on to more things. As I mentioned earlier, if we're too busy to go through the mail piles up until it's an overwhelming stack, and then we just keep on putting it off, right? We're too busy to clean surfaces. Those surfaces get more cluttered, and then it takes longer to clean. So it's just a self-perpetuating cycle. Sometimes the stresses of life, whether that's deadlines, whether that's projects, whether that's issues going on with family health, personal health, we tend to postpone things until they snowball, and then it feels overwhelming. However, in those times when life is stressful, if we don't have clutter around us in our space, if we have clear surfaces, if we have some room to move and breathe and see what we have, we don't have to spend extra time in the morning shifting through our closet to find what to wear because we can easily see what is in our closet, then we have more space, right? Then we have more ease in our life. So while it can feel overwhelming to clear the clutter and get yourself to a fresh start, it is so worth it because when life is stressful, we're not then also taking the extra time and energy to navigate through our cluttered space. So here are some tips that I want to share with you. If you're inspired, perhaps, to start clearing the clutter and taking a fresh look at what's around you and what serves you and releasing what does not, I invite you to first start with your why, as in so many aspects, right? Whether it's setting goals for your business, whether it's changing habits for better personal health. If you are motivated to clear your home space, start with why. Why is that important to you and why now? Is it for your own personal well-being? Is it to clear the air and let you physically be able to breathe more easily in your space? Is it to make your space more inviting for yourself, for your partner, or for yourself and calling in a romantic partner that serves you in this year ahead? Why is clearing your space important to you and why now? So make a note of that. Meditate on that, share that with a friend. We'll come back in a moment to having a friend who you can share this process with. So start with a why. And then I invite you to prioritize a space or a place. What space would be the most transformative for you if this space is reclaimed? So think first about a space and then start your list. Now, your list can be focused on this space that you have already identified. Or if you're like me, sometimes you need to go wide and then narrow it down. So start a list of all of the places in your home, around your home, even in your workplace, where you get frustrated. You have any trouble finding anything. You just feel overwhelmed in the space. It's visually cluttered or it's just not working at optimum for you. Start that list. In the kitchen, we've got the stuff drawer. In your office, you've got the surface of your desk. Maybe, like myself, you have cabinets where you keep books. So you've got open shelves, but cabinets where those books get a little more chaotic, notebooks and note pages and things stuffed on top of things. So start putting those things down on your list and then revisit your priorities, right? Collect your list, identify your priority. What is going to give you the most motivation and satisfaction in seeing one thing cleared first? All right, so go ahead and make a list. Be clear on your priority, but also check things off of your list as you go, because celebrating your wins is everything, especially when it comes to decluttering. And count it all. So if your kitchen is high on the priority list, go ahead and add to your list. You've got this many cabinets, the plates, the glasses, the pots and pans, the spices and ingredients, right? So that you can check each one off, because each one of those counts. On a day, you might be able to make it through 3 cabinets. On a day, you might only be able to make it through 1. But celebrate those wins and keep it small. So plan short, regular installments. You want to have your why. You want to identify your priority space. You want a list so that you can check things off. And then you want to plan, how are you going to do this? Give yourself 20-minute increments to start. Start off small so that you can do it without feeling overwhelmed and you can build it into your schedule. So maybe on Saturday morning, you spend 1 hour clearing one area. Maybe if you can devote a little bit more time to it, you can spend 15 minutes organizing an area, say after you do the dishes in the kitchen, right? So give yourself a way to kind of build this in and weave this throughout your schedule so that you're not saying, this weekend, I am going to clean every cabinet and drawer in my kitchen. And then 4 hours in, you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, you're discouraged, you stop, and you never get back to it. So this is why it's important to plan frequent, small installments to chip away at your clearing project. All right. And then remember to celebrate your progress. And I like to do this by recruiting a friend. So as I mentioned earlier, as you're identifying somewhere in your home and why you want to get this handled, why you want to clear the clutter, let someone know. If this is your partner, if this is your kids, if this is a friend of yours, enlist them in the project. Let them know you're going to be sharing about it. Let them know you might need some support in cheerleading. Ask them to check in with you now and then. Ask you how it's going. Let them know how they can be a good accountability buddy for you. If this is somebody who's going to ask you every time they talk with you how it's going and you're going to start avoiding them, that's not an accountability system that's going to work for you. However, if you let them know, I'm going to share with you, please just cheer me on, ask me what's next. And that's just enough. I need a low pressure accountability buddy on this, and find someone who can work with you in that balance. So I encourage you to recruit a friend to maybe even tackle it in their own space. And maybe you can each cheer each other on as you declutter and move into this year with a little bit less on your plate, right? So I hope you found some inspiration, some useful ideas there in terms of how clutter builds up around us, the cost of tolerating that clutter around us, the way that stress multiplies clutter, and some of the reasons why even the smartest people among us are susceptible to clutter and even hoarding patterns. I'd love to hear what you took away from the conversation today. And I want to share with you that I am going to be hosting a decluttering workshop coming up next month at the beginning of February, Saturday, February 8th. It will be live online from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific and from noon until 4 p.m. Eastern Time here in the States. I invite you to join me for a day that will be organized around some more insights like we explored today, some meditations to get clear on your why, on your priorities. We'll have some time to get into action, to come back and talk about how it felt, to cheer each other on, and lots of other great goodies. I love to have these live events to share that power of motivation within a group. You might just meet your new favorite accountability buddy. And I would love to spend this time inspiring you to make a cleaner home for yourself, a clearer and more productive workspace, somewhere where, as you feel more calm and centered and less chaotic internally, mentally, and emotionally, you see that demonstrated in your physical environment. So I'll have more information about that in the show notes. You'll find a link on happifiedlife.com where you find this episode. I would love to hear your insights, and I would love to see you at our workshop coming up on February 8th. For listeners, I have a special discount for you, a special early bird registration discount available through January 31st. Use Happified as your coupon code. You'll find the link to register at happifiedlife.com. If you found some golden nuggets in this episode, share it with a friend. If you want to bring a friend to the workshop, send me a message, let me know. I'll work out a special friend discount. And as always, I am so grateful to you for joining me today, for making the time and the space to hear what I have to share with you, to join the conversation. I look forward to hearing about your insights, any questions I can answer for you. And I will see you next time here on the show. Until then, take good care of yourself.
Thanks for listening. You'll find all the resources we discussed today online at happifiedlife.com, along with links to subscribe to Happified on your favorite player and a handy search tool so you can search all of our previous episodes. Help us grow by leaving a quick review and share this episode with a friend. Until next time, keep on shining.